everyone, so today I'm going to do a fairly quick review of the SAGA Age of Vikings Universe supplement. So this is the first supplement for SAGA to come out with the new rules for 2nd edition. Following this supplement, other supplements are expected to come out for various periods that you can play the SAGA rule set in. Now, this book, firstly, I will just say it probably cost similar to what the first SAGA rulebook for that was used for Dark Ages, for the Viking Age, cost. I mean, it was, I'd gotten this for, I believe, around 50 Canadian in that area. It's similar, so it doesn't have all the rules to play the game. You actually need the rulebook, but it does have 12 battle boards that it comes with, and you essentially, with the other one, I think had about 4 to 6 battle boards, if I remember correct. And so you had to buy a number of other books to get all the other battle boards and the rules for those factions. And so in the end, you're kind of, if you're buying a universe book, paying an extra $20, roughly US Canadian, for the rules themselves, in addition to this book, which was about the price of the original. But you're getting all of the ability to do all of the factions, or quite a few factions, for SAGA. Now, the book is a hardbound book, and like I mentioned, has 12 battle boards. To go over the specifics of the book itself, I mean, it has a really nice paper, like matted paper, like I said in the video for the rule book. It doesn't seem like a magazine style of paper. As well, we have some original, what appears to be original artwork, not just pictures. And they have like a little area where they talk about sort of the Dark Ages, and they show all the factions and where they're located on the map, which I thought was kind of cool for those of us that kind of learn history through wargaming to some degree. Many folks will know this already, but I really liked that. I thought that was great. They do have, like in previous version of SAGA, a character like Ragnar who speaks to you throughout the book and gives you information, which I think is really cool, and it's fun, kind of gives you the feeling of ambiance of the Dark Ages that they're discussing, which is kind of neat. And it does go through, the SAGA dice and talks about them and the different factions. And in this case, they even tell you a little bit about the difficulty of the factions you're going to be getting into with the Dark Ages with this rule set, which ones they feel might be harder to start with and which ones might be easier. And then the bulk of the book is each faction has approximately 4 pages. It seems like I think everyone has 4 pages dedicated to them. It starts out with the title of the faction with a nice picture of miniatures. Then it discusses sort of background and goes into the specifics of the details around the faction and the faction rules, some of their limitations and benefits. As well, it talks about like the legendary units and legendary heroes that faction has available to them. And then they have a page dedicated to sort of their casual opinion of the faction, giving you sort of just information about what to expect when you play them, as well as answering questions specific to the battle board abilities that many people may commonly ask for that faction. So it's a very interesting packaging that each I should say, that each faction gets as you go through the book. So there again, now I'm on the Welsh, and it shows a picture of the miniatures, background, the troops and faction rules. And then it shows the statistics and information on the faction, and then it has the legendary units and heroes, and then it has that sort of page that will talk through some of the battle board abilities and just give some general off-the-cuff information on the faction, which I think was really cool. And so then one thing I will mention is, I'm not going to page through the whole book, but I will say that the main factions that you get for battle boards and that are actually provided in this are Anglo-Saxons, Welsh, Normans, Vikings, Anglo-Danes, the last Romans, which for me is at least new. I didn't expect that, and I even had a friend that asked that if you can play Romans in Saga or the new Saga, and I said no, just assuming they wouldn't be there. So they have this faction called the Last Romans, the Norse Gaels, the Irish, the Pagan Russ, the Scots, the Carlingians, the Joms Vikings, and then we have some other sections, which I'm going to go to now. So a section is included in the book called Old Friends, New Enemies, and essentially these are factions that you're able to use either Aegis and Arthur battle board, so that would be from the prior edition, or in one case you can actually use the Age of Crusades, the Moorish battle board. And so you are essentially going to have three, the Germanic peoples. I apologize if I pronounce these wrong, but the Lombards, Lombard, it's a B. I'm having trouble reading the script because they're using some fancy script. The Lombard, the Germanic peoples, the Steppe peoples, and then the Umayyad from the using the Moorish battle board from the Age of Crusades. Now they give you specific rules that you need to follow regarding hiring mercenaries and legendary units from those periods if you use them within the Viking Age supplement. So I thought that was kind of neat. So that's like a bit of a bonus for folks that want to use other things and be able to use them in the Viking Age. And they talk about how it makes sense for this faction historically to potentially, you know, be able to fight within this age, but due to their geography and various things. So I thought that was actually neat. Then there's a section, new equipment, and it just lists the rules for the War Banner. And so the War Banner rules have a page. And then my favorite part of the book is the Swords for Hire. Now, I don't really remember the first edition in the main rule book having nearly this much material for various things you can add to your warband. So there are rules to have swords for hire and how they affect bringing saga dice and how it affects the rest of your army, and limitations as to how many you can take. But they have, and I'll just sort of read some of them off. They have like the Shield Maidens, Breton Cavalry, Flemish Mercenaries, which I'm looking forward to, Steppe Nomads, Vagrant Warriors, Scouts just in general, Angry Monks. I've skipped a lot already, but you know, the Wandering Bard, a Priest, Personal Champion. And so I skipped a number, but these are all things you can add, and they give rules for them to your warband to give it more flavor and potentially for strategy. And so I really, really was excited about that. And one thing I didn't mention is for each entry here, they list the saga dice in color and symbol next to it that of the armies that are allowed to take that. So in some cases, you may not be able to. Some of them are fairly like diverse as far as how many can take them. So like the Priest, pretty much everybody I think there can take it. But then like I'm just going to go to maybe Shield Maidens. Let's just see. Well, Shield Maidens actually a lot people can take too, but it's 4, not all 6. But in some cases, the Steppe Nomads only, like, it shows the Vikings, and I think it's the Roman die. I'm not sure. I have to take a look. But essentially, only 2 sort of groups that use those 2 dice can actually take the Steppe Nomad. So that's an example where, you know, you have to look at those dice to see whether it's available to your unit. But I think a lot are available to a lot of different factions. I don't think people are going to be left out too much. So they added another thing here, which was interesting, and it's called Relics and Artifacts. Now, these, I believe, are optional. People can choose not to have these within the game, like the players, so you have to say in the beginning whether you allow relics and artifacts. But if you do, they give you rules to perhaps use a sacred banner, an ancestral sword, saints' relics, fragments of the true cross, legitimate sort of heirloom armor. So, and then they show a famous steed and a marvelous cloak. And so these are things to add another level of interesting flavor to your game. Again, if you want to be more on the historical side and like not, you could argue that these things historically could potentially have been in, these battles, but rather than having sort of artifacts that imbued in some sort of power, you actually could just say we're going to play just straight historical and not worry about that stuff or include that stuff. That's really just between you and your opponent. The other thing too is I was thinking we might be getting a glimpse of what some of the fantasy options are going to be and how they're going to work when looking at relics and artifacts, because it's quite possible that they've already pretty much said that there's going to be like a fantasy universe for Saga as well, and so we're probably going to see this kind of stuff, I'm guessing, in it. So that'll be kind of neat to get a little bit of a taste of that and to see how it works. So, what do I think overall? I'd have to say I am really, really happy with this book. I mean, I really like the rules, but this kicked it up a notch for me. Like, I like this even more. I've always wanted a nice, proper, hard-bound book from Studio Tomahawk for the games that I play for them. I didn't get the Aegis and Arthur supplement for towards the end of first edition, and I also didn't get the game Congo, which looked like it was really packaged well and has a really nice book and some accessories for it. I'm really, not to get off the Saga review for Age of Vikings, but I really hope that something like this actually comes out with this sort of level of quality for Musket and Tomahawks in a bound book. And so that I'm now seeing this for the first time, what they can produce here like this, and I really like it. And so I love the fact that they broke down the factions fairly evenly and spaced throughout the book and kind of almost segmented them away from each other. We don't have factions ending on one page and other ones beginning on the same page. They're actually very neat and tidy, just going through the book. I really like the extra sections that were put on at the end, in particular all of the options that you have for the swords for hire. And so I'm actually really looking forward to this edition. I'm really quite excited what they've done with it, and I hope you've enjoyed this review. I can say that I'm really, really recommend it. I have little reservation in that, I think that it's a great book. Okay, take care, everybody.